Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business, brought to you by MegaPixx Media. Joining me today is Corinne Pohlmann, who is Senior Vice President of National Affairs with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Thanks for joining us today, Corinne.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to talk election, and obviously last night, Justin Trudeau re-elected, Liberals come in with a minority government. Just want to get, first of all, your thoughts or the CFIB's overall reaction to those results from last night.
Well, it's certainly a government we know. We know well. It's a bit of sort of the same that what we've been dealing with for the last couple of years, of course. But, obviously we now have to move forward and get back to dealing with the issues that are in front of us, of which there are many. And so obviously our focus now is on making sure we work with those that were elected to make sure that we can continue with this recovery that we're still in the middle of, we believe, and still have some ways to go.
So, Corinne, I want to go through a few points that the CFIB released today, sort of recommendations for the government to pursue. And these were not necessarily all Liberal stuff. They were a mix and match of different proposals by different parties during the elections. But these are things that you guys would like to see. And we'll talk about each one. Let's start with number one. The government extending rent and wage subsidies in Canada. Why is that important right now?
Well, the fact is only about 40% of Canadian businesses are back to normal revenues. And so there's a lot still struggling. And in fact, in some parts of Canada, as you well know, there are restrictions being reimposed once again. So there is still a lot of assistance that still needs to be out there. We're certainly hearing from businesses quite worried about the fact that the current wage and rent subsidies actually end at the end of October, so only like a month away. So the first thing that's really important is to get government back and get government to extend those wage subsidies, potentially even increase them, given we're sort of going backwards a little bit, and make sure that there's a little bit of certainty for those businesses that need it, that those supports are going to be there.
Okay, super. The second point was reopening the CFIB loan. Why is that important?
Well, the fact remains that debt is still sky high. The average small business has accumulated about $170,000 in new debt due to COVID. And so they're still looking for ways that they can have that relieved to some degree. And so it was actually the Conservatives who came up with this idea of basically a new type of CFIB program where you can get up to $200,000 in loans, of which 25% would be forgivable. So something along those lines, or increasing the amount forgivable of the CFIB loan that's already out there, extending the deadline of which you have to pay it back, because it's next year you have to pay it back in order to get the forgivable portion. We need a bit more of a focus on how we're going to help these businesses get out from under all that debt.
Okay, super. The next point is financial support for vaccine passports. I find this interesting, obviously, because, here in Alberta, as of yesterday, we embarked on that program where certain businesses like restaurants, for example, will have to make sure that people are fully vaccinated before coming into their establishments. What would you like to see? Obviously, this is going to be an expense incurred by businesses, probably have to hire people to stand at the door, to make sure people are okay coming in. So what would you like to see from the government?
Well, the Liberals during the election pledged about $1 billion to the provinces to help with the adoption of a vaccine passport system. So we're pushing them to think about making sure that part of that money is allocated to go to businesses who are the ones that actually have to implement it. There are costs, like you mentioned, associated with hiring people, with having people collect the information. There could be technology costs associated with this. And we believe that shouldn't have to be absorbed by the business, that if this is something governments have decided is important, then they have to make sure that they're helping those businesses deal with the costs associated with it.
Okay, super. And the last point that the CFIB was talking about was a rethinking of the Canada Recovery Benefit. First of all, maybe explain for those of us out there that are not 100% certain about what this is, what it is, and why it's important.
So the Canada Recovery Benefit is essentially it started, I think, $500 per week that individuals could claim if they lost their jobs or were not able to go back to work due to childcare or other reasons associated with the pandemic. The Canada Recovery Benefit is what replaced what we called the CERB early on in the pandemic, and it still exists. It's for anybody who is not on EI, which has also been enhanced to help folks through the pandemic period. And what we're hearing is there's a big shortage of labor. It's an issue we're hearing more and more and more about all across the country. And this is one of the areas that a lot of small business owners are telling us that they're struggling with, that they're trying to bring people back who they had laid off, who are not coming back because they are staying on the CRB system. And it could be for a variety of reasons. But we feel like it needs to be thought through a bit more because it's keeping these businesses from being able to be as productive as possible by bringing the people back in the jobs that they have open now. So we'd like to see a rethink around that program and make sure that it's not keeping people from returning to work.
Yeah, and it's funny because today, earlier this morning, Statistics Canada released a report on job vacancies in Canada, which is rising. And I notice on your press release today that you mentioned 45% of businesses, only 45% of businesses in Canada are fully staffed. So that's got to be something that's got to be dealt with pretty darn quick, right?
That's right. And this is not the only reason that we're seeing a shortage of labor, but it is one of the reasons that's coming up that we think could be dealt with. There are other things that we need to start looking at more in a more focused way to help all those businesses struggling to get the people they need.
Okay, super. Thanks very much, Corinne, for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, that was Corinne Pohlmann, who is Senior Vice President of National Affairs for the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business, brought to you by MegaPixx Media. Thanks for joining us.